of advice do you have to homeowners?
Practicing that preparedness. Starting the conversation now is always going to be a benefit to any association out there.
And welcome to Recovery Report Live. I'm Dan Odess, president of GlobalPro, where we manage risk to recovery, and we have managed more than $1 billion in that recovery. I'm excited for today's show to talk about some important issues that we as policyholders need to know about, and I want to start breaking down some of the trends, some of the things that we've seen come out of this whole tragedy, and the potential impact it's going to have on the insurance market here. Obviously in Florida. I think at large, though, I think there's going to be a lot of coastal areas looking closely at different types of construction methods and also considering how the insurance companies have responded to this with notices of denials and cancellations and requests for 40-year recertifications. And I think something that we all have learned, as this has happened, is that there's only very few areas in the South Florida region that actually require a building to recertify itself every 40, 50 years and beyond. So, and there's definitely going to be major overhaul to that. We totally expect that to be happening. And I think what we're going to start to see in the insurance market is a lot more attention to what is going on, both at these association properties, but how the boards are making those decisions, those procedures that they go through, the liability for these board members. We're hearing about rampant questions regarding whether or not board members want to be on board and whether or not they're going to resign, and a lot of questions about management companies and their liability and responsibilities to those board members and guiding them. And, of course, the engineers, the architect, and the crosshairs just, and as the litigation and issues evolve, we're totally and absolutely going to see changes come. I mean, they're going to start looking and redefining what it means to be negligent or liable for these things. That obviously is going to have major impact on your insurance and coverage and whether or not that's going to. So again, reshaping many of those things. But before I get into all of those things, I want to take a little step back and talk to you about the legislation memo that is live on our website that we are posting on our social media. Make sure that you go check it out in the resource section. If you go into the resource section, right there at the top menu, click down on the resource. You'll be able to download the memo. Breaks down important issues, particularly on the property insurance side. We don't go into all of the issues and changes that were made. We want to talk about issues that you as a policyholder, we want information you can actually use. That's what we're always focused on every single week here at the Recovery Report Live in the Griffin Studio. So again, it breaks it all down. It even talks about an important issue regarding liability claims. We heard from the lobbyists from Community Association Institute about an important change, because there was this rampant, cottage industry that was being created by insurance companies, actually, where they were paying unit owners for damages and then suing associations no matter what, whether there was liability or not, which was then obviously causing the cost of liability insurance allegedly to go through the roof. So what this has done is it's curbed really this issue, and that it obviously plagued a lot of associations. We had many times after a major water loss, associations calling us constantly about, what do they do with this? And a lot of associations, to avoid the uncertain fate of where it was going to go and potential other claims being made, would go ahead and pay it ahead of time and didn't realize that they somehow had insurance liability that will defend it. But as many of those that have experienced a car accident have seen, sometimes our auto insurance decides to pay rather than fight, because the fight itself costs more than just paying, even though the issue of liability or concern, they may have been able to defeat it. It just sometimes made more sense just to go ahead and pay because they get rid of it for a few $1,000s. Unfortunately, though, for community associations, it was going on loss runs, which was leading to these huge loss runs, which again, you want to use insurance. You want to have it there. You want to be able to protect yourself. You want to use it as a financial tool to make you whole. But at the same time, if you're making claims all the time, clearly the volume in itself is a little bit scary and uncertain. So, the insurance companies think a little bit, think twice about it. So you got to be a little bit concerned about that. But again, you should never shy away or be concerned about making claims or noticing your liability insurer of it. That's not what was going on here. You just literally, it was like automatically sue, push for attorney's fees and damages and make huge claims against them when there was absolutely no clear liability for the association. But on the association side, it was like, get rid of this. We don't want this lawsuit. Go ahead and make some sort of payment and make them go away. So again, it didn't really make a lot of sense, but that's all in that memo. It talks a little about that, shows you what that Florida statute is. I think one of the things that you're starting to hear a lot of talk about is, as a community association, whether you're a board member, a unit owner, or a property manager, start to look at these laws. Don't just rely on your attorneys to give you interpretations. Don't just show up for the CE class. Look at the legislation, read the actual laws, read the English, and then ask questions. I think it's a really important thing. We talked about issues regarding 558. Most people don't realize that the entire thing about 558 is about not going to litigation and spending millions of dollars on attorney's fees. Unfortunately, though, because no one has actually, or most managers don't read it, or board members don't read it, they get caught up in this whole litigation process, which just runs these fees, just huge fees, and costs just skyrocketing. So make sure you check out the legislation itself, read it, and then ask questions. I think it's a really just best business practice, particularly if you're a board member. We're hearing a lot about corporation law, and you're now hearing a lot of talks about how that, how the implications of that for board members. I'll be honest, I've attended many Community Association Institute law seminars, and I've met with many community association attorneys. I've never, ever, in over 10 years of doing this, I've heard more discussion about corporate law as it relates to community associations than I am today. So again, a whole nother area that you all need to be paying attention to closely, understanding it, and asking questions. But again, go ahead and read it for yourself. Well, here at GlobalPro, we're always staying involved in our community, and we're always wanting to make sure that you have the information you can use. Part of that, and as it relates to insurance and recoveries and things, is construction. So it's really important for our team to be involved in the construction industry. And this week, we are a big-time sponsor of the weigh-in station at the Latin Builders Association Fishing Tournament down in the Keys. We're super excited about it. And why we're involved in this organization is because we want to understand what's going on, what changes are happening in the construction industry. It's really important for us to be able to provide credible advice and information and evaluations of loss and damage. We got to be in it. We got to be involved in these industries. We got to be involved in the community, learning from professionals, learning from contractors about what they're doing, the techniques, the implications of changes in laws. And we saw major changes and overhaul for a lot of the construction-related solicitations of new business opportunities, whether it's for roofs and things like that. But I'm talking about bigger picture. I'm talking just simply about methods of construction. I definitely think there's going to be a lot of changes, especially in the wake of Champlain Tower, where there's going to be multiple changes to the methods of constructions, whether it's enforced through changes in code, whether it's enforced through just changes in how things are inspected, or the involvement of engineers in the decision-making process for community associations when they're deciding on construction projects. Bringing the contractors more into the fold as it relates to the decision-making process and involving them in it. I think you're going to see a lot more involvement of construction professionals earlier on, and they're going to be able to bring all the expertise. So we want to be there. We want to know this information. We want to be involved as well. So super excited about that. We're going to be out there. We're going to be posting all kinds of pictures and video of our team out on the boat, catching the fish, involved in this industry, mingling with the folks with the Latin Builders Association, which is an incredible organization. A lot of impact here in Florida, both on the legislation level as well as locally here in South Florida, always pushing for change, always setting the bar higher. We're super excited about it, so I can't wait to get down there and join all the good folks at the Latin Builders Association this week to kick that off. So some of the construction-related things that we've been hearing about and talking about is, in the wake of this disaster is, and the changes in the market that we are already seeing. We are already seeing huge increases in construction costs, right? Well, we've seen some of that waver. We've seen some still rise. We've seen some still fall. There's this issue of semiconductors and a lot of electronic stuff. And as the construction industry has relied more and more on electronics and innovation and changes, there's downward stream and push, and which may result in either increased cost of construction today or tomorrow. We'll see. But those things are kind of like shaping up and changing the market as they're going. But is there a cooling off in the market? There's a lot of talk about rising rental rates. There's talk about that the Americans can't even afford to buy homes in the urban areas or near urban areas, and the cost of these homes is just so high. But now the rental rates are now escalating and are so high and they can't afford to rent. So there's a lot of changes that are going to impact what's going to happen, how those things are going to change, which again has this weird trickle down effect or sideways effect on actual construction starts, completions, this rush to finish certain things, the cost of materials, where materials are being allocated, a lot of different changes in the market that we're seeing right now. So again, I'm very much interested in getting down to the keys and mingling with the folks at the Latin Building Association and hearing what they have to say about some of the things that we expect, some of the future changes in some of the construction methods, the developments, and obviously insurance, right? As a contractor, as I am a licensed general contractor, I am always worried about insurance, not only for my clients, but also for my companies, right? And how the changes in insurance, are going to impact the types of methods of construction, the types of materials that we use, where the emphasis is going to be put, and are they going to lead to a certain increase in costs and shortages in labor and materials? There's definitely going to be some major changes there. And so I think it's something that we all need to be paying really close attention to. And I talked about the rising cost of rental rates. Well, one of the other things too is that the HO6 policies, right? The HO6 policies that protect unit owners, and are there going to be major changes there? Because there's a little bit of uncertainty. I know this because I have spoke with some of the victims from the Champlain Towers regarding their own personal claims who did have insurance, and there was a lot of uncertainty. They couldn't get clear answers from their own homeowners insurance as to whether it's going to cover or whether it's not going to cover, and when the money's going to come, and how much they're owed, and what they're going to cover for. Are they going to run out of their additional living expenses coverage quicker? They're living in hotels. They truly are homeless. They lost their homes. They're not sure where they're going to go. Are there going to be changes to the HO6 policy? I would absolutely expect that to happen. I'm curious to see whether or not there'll finally be legislation that requires unit owners actually to carry their own insurance. It's something that has wavered and been a little bit unclear here in South Florida. You have a lot of foreign investors who maybe not used to buying insurance or don't want to buy it because they bought the unit on all cash and their mortgage company is not requiring them to carry it. So our HO6 policy is going to become mandatory. It certainly would help in major disaster situations and helping victims and offsetting those costs if there's coverage. And a major disaster doesn't need to be a full-out collapse, right? It could be just a major hurricane loss. And I can tell you from our experience being on the front lines, helping many associations, where associations have suffered major damage from a hurricane and a lot of their unit owners are displaced, it's remarkable how important that insurance becomes to unit owners when they realize that their HOA fees or their condo association fees doesn't cover them for those costs, or that portion that was paid into the insurance for the association is not going to cover those additional living expenses. And so I would hope that there's some at least discussion about it at the legislation level. And hopefully, some sort of legislation around that clarifies this issue and requirement of insurance. I think a lot of these victims could have benefited from it. But again, it all goes into consideration of cost of living and things like that. So where you have communities with a large amount of fixed income or that are perhaps in retirement, it's a very difficult thing to suddenly require someone to incur extra or additional expense. And a lot of insurance companies, unfortunately, have pulled out of the market or are changing their programs. A lot of times you used to be able to get these discounts for multi-line policies. Some of them are not even offering anymore. So a lot of things to go into, a lot of things to consider there. So definitely keep an eye on that. We will be as well, certainly providing that information you can use there. Our phone is ringing off the hook since this disaster happened, and we started the discussion about how we have represented dozens of buildings and the recovery for damage to their concrete, whether they're new or old, it doesn't matter. And many of them actually originated when they got a 40-year inspection report. So once they received that 40-year inspection report, we received a phone call from a manager or a board member that had experienced their service in the past, was very happy with us, which, we have literally dozens, if not hundreds of testimonials on a weekly basis, people wanting to give us testimonials on what we do. And what we've been able to do for a lot of these associations is identify potential coverage in insurance for their damages, which goes to mitigating the ultimate cost of doing it, which offsets potential or mitigates the amount of a loan that's required, or even maybe even eradicate even a special assessment. when concrete falls or these other issues, a lot of people don't think, they chalk it up as a maintenance issue or something long-term and ongoing. But the reality is when you start to talk to those board members and unit owners, they never see concrete falling, right? They see cracks, right? So when they see the concrete fall, suddenly they want to, do something about it. Well, that's your first notice of the issue. And with the prompt reporting of that and based on a deep review of your policy, you may be able to recover for some, if not all of that damage, which could go to mitigating the need for special assessment or bank loans and all these other things. So, it's something certainly to look closely at. It's certainly something that we're doing a lot of right now. We are spending a lot of time speaking with community associations, their boards, unit owners, and property managers that are interested in knowing a little bit more about what we do, how we do it. If you are in the process of getting a 40-year certification done, or if you're in the process of getting the health and safety of your building checked because of this disaster that occurred, let us know about it. Let us be a part of the discussion. Why? Because the information that's contained within that report needs to be consistent with the language that's used in the policy in order to trigger coverage, right? And if there is an opportunity for coverage, you certainly don't want to walk yourself out of it. And words get their meaning from words around them, so you want to make sure it's using the words that if there is something that should be covered by your insurance, that you are afforded that opportunity to recover for it. So we want to make sure and be part of the conversation and identify areas where we believe there's coverage, work with your engineers, work with your contractors and your board and association to make decisions that are in your best interest. This isn't just about making claims, this is making a claim where there's a recovery. So if there is a potential recovery, we want to analyze the situation, look at your policy, meet with your engineer, discuss what is going on there, what the situation is, look closely at the policy again, and then make a decision as to whether or not there is a potential for a recovery. And if there is, obviously we want to add opportunity to represent your association, and given that opportunity, as we have done for many other associations, it could tremendously benefit your association financially. So, and as a fiduciary, a board member, as a property manager, this is an opportunity to do it. So take the time, give us a call us first, let us know about the situation. We want to be there to help you go through the process, think through this logically. Is there coverage? You're paying a tremendous amount of money for premiums. Is making a claim going to negatively impact you? Most often not at all, not even close to it. We have a lot of fear mongering around deductibles and making claims and how that results in, increased amount of premiums and you're going to get dropped and everything else. Interestingly enough, whenever you typically hear about rate increases around the legislative session, you hear about the insurance companies lobbying for them, but suddenly when you have a claim, you're all of a sudden, concerned about the rate increases. The reality is a lot of people are seeing rate increases now. We've recovered literally tens of millions of dollars association that got a renewal with the same insurance company for less money. It has happened, all right? So if that's the case and if that is possible, then how is there an absolute direct correlation between the claims you have and the rates that you pay? Not to say that there isn't, but it's hard to say that, in fact, that's the only consideration and it is the sole consideration for getting a rate increase and why you shouldn't file a claim. So what I'm saying is that's not why you shouldn't file a claim. What I'm saying is that let us analyze the situation. Let us help you make decisions. Let us review the situation, meet with the professionals that you are, show them what you're covered for, what you're not covered for. Either are there damages that you are covered for? Are there things that you're not? Identify them, separate them, and logically go through the situation and identify how you can benefit, how your association can benefit from what you pay for it. Insurance is that financial tool to help and protect you. Well, folks, that's all we got for you this week on the Recovery Report Live. Again, I'm excited to get down to the Keys to join the entire organization of the Latin Builders Association as a sponsor of the way, and we will see you all there to talk about all these changes that are coming. Again, our hearts and prayers are with the entire community that continue to recover from this tragic event. I know that the media has somewhat moved on, and there's another cycle happening. This one's going to stick with us for a long time. We are continuing to do our part, working with Camilla's House and other organizations to give back to charity, to do what we can, to continue to monitor the situation and staying in touch with the unit owners and people that we know that are directly or indirectly impacted by this in the community. So please do your part, step up. We'll be out there on the front lines during any sort of disaster. And as we are still in hurricane season, stay vigilant in your preparedness. If you need any help with us, call us first. Well, thank you so much for joining us this week on the Recovery Report Live. We will see you back here next Thursday at 11 o'clock for another episode of the Recovery Report Live.